Good morning. I'd like to call the February 7th, 2023 bid board meeting to order. We have acknowledgement of a quorum. Actually, everybody's here. That's great. We're missing Wes. I didn't see nobody next to me. The first item is approval of minutes from January 3rd.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 1, financial report.
Great. I have one minor edit to the financial report. There's an error in the electricity expenditures for the month. It's actually $817, not $8,117.
That's good.
So otherwise, the main expenditures so far this year are the removal of the lights and decorations from David J. Frank. And then we had $395 that comes out annually for the Sirius radio subscription for our downtown audio.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Or
Aye.
actually discussion first, sorry.
I think it's great that our, electric bill is not the size of my electric bill.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the nuCloud Maps presentation, and I guess we're going to do that remotely
Yes.
or virtually with them.
We have Todd James joining us today, who will be presenting on the maps. Hey, Todd, can you hear us all right?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Let me just turn this up.
How's that?
It's great.
Okay, good. Everybody?
Well, thanks for joining us today. We have you up on our screens, and it's probably hard for you to be able to see us, so we have our video turned off. But we can see you, and you're able to share your screen at the bottom. So please go ahead and let us know if you have questions. Yep.
Yeah, let me see if I can. Are y'all able to see this map here I have up currently?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks for everybody's time. I spoke with Jess earlier about, the possibility of doing an interactive map or virtual tour for your area. I'm with the company nuCloud. We were recently acquired by Modern Campus. We do interactive campus maps and virtual tours. I've been doing them for about the last 15 years. Traditionally, I've worked with schools, but the common element that any customer of us that we've had over the years, whether it's a resort or a hospital or another town, is they're wanting to use this as a recruitment marketing tool. You'll have facilities that you'll spend millions of dollars on that you want to showcase, and this is a way to be able to do that. The web is what people use to search with. We do have print options and all that as well, but interactive maps is kind of what we've focused on. There are different artworks and different styles that you can use for a base map, but you can also customize your categories. So I was just planning on walking you guys through a few different examples that we've done over the years. Feel free to ask questions as I go along, but I'll try to keep this as kind of an overview just because I know we have a broad audience here, but let me know if anything comes up. I wanted to pull a similar, scenario that I could envision with y'all for this first one. This is the capital for the state of Washington. You'll see here we have an eye-catching 3D map illustration that we drew for them. For areas that's not part of what we're trying to highlight, you can use your artistic license to do several different effects. On this one here, we just emptied out the blocks to kind of give you a reference of distance, but just kind of highlight the properties that we're trying to focus here on. On the legend on the side, we can customize this from the colors or the content or even the format in our system. The categories here, buildings, when I would click that would expand, visitor parking, state employee, all this is stuff that each client would define. So if you're doing restaurants or commercial property or residential or, municipalities or whatever the case is, that would be content that you guys would determine that would go into the system. All of these icons and all the color of that, we would stylize that to your effects if you have a certain style guide or fonts and colors that you guys use as part of your brand marketing efforts. We want the map to be consistent with the rest of your efforts. So it doesn't look like a third-party system. Not that we're embarrassed of our work, but it's about you more than us. For each of these points of interest, you have content windows that you can add, photos, videos, 360s, whatever type of media that you have to supply. You'd have a title, you have a description area here. You can have as much or as little content as you want in here. I'll kind of go to, our next example here just to keep going. But this is a different map illustration style you'll see on this one. We also have a different effect for highlighting areas. They have a construction zone that they wanted to have an outline for versus an icon for. So that would be an option. There's even, parking, that's a popular place with a lot of things. The yellow part, the green, the red, all handicap accessibility information, all that is stuff that you'll have a tool to be able to, to implement. We're happy to, implement this content, but you'll have a login and password for a backend to be able to kind of manage this is the way our system will work. This one, just to kind of pull on some of the content as well, they have a little bit larger media file here just to, showcase things in a different fashion. Let me resize this. Here's a zoo that we've worked with just to show you some variety. It doesn't have to be, buildings, so to say. You can have areas and whatnot that you're trying to highlight. But, the takeaway, let me expand this just a bit bigger. You would have your categories, and whether, it's animals or what have you, that's, the takeaway. Let's see, I have some content. These all have the same themes. Let me go to, this one here. So this will have 360 images here, just a different type of media you can add. We can manipulate the legend to go on one side or the other. This is a different art style, icons, some variety on that. Let me go to, an aerial image, as this is some variety of different things that you could have as far as the base file. Our system really just wants a high resolution JPEG. You're going to be from your area, a drone's probably not going to work, maybe an airplane shot, something like this. We have pilots that would then get the parameters of where we're going and to be able to, take images of that. But all that's kind of just the design part of the process, I guess. Give you a quick overview of kind of the back-end editor. All of our clients have a login and password. The workbench would be, where all the work is done essentially. So we have markers on the map. We have a list of our points of interest that we can come in here and, I can click on the library point of interest. This loads a blue bar across the top. This will pull up an editor screen so I can come over here and change the title if I want to, add a description if they need to. If you don't want to have a description or a gallery of photos, if it's like an ATM or something like that, we can disable the stock window. But there's icons that you can be able to associate with this. They're just transparent PNG items that you design in Photoshop, or we can create them for you. You add your photos. So if I want to add these 3 photos, they're now in the gallery. Multimedia would be anything you can get an embed code for, whether it's 360 or a YouTube video. Doesn't have to just be photos. But you can, allocate things in the category. It's all, a manageable system, I guess, is kind of the quick overview I'm wanting to highlight. But, there's an editor here. There's some settings sections where you can specify, your legend positioning, your zoom controls. There's a category manager. So I would imagine for you guys, if you're having like a 4th of July event or something like that, you can customize your map URL to load certain content by default and send that out to the masses and say, hey, here's our map you're used to seeing, but here's the subset of information we're talking about this weekend or what have you. But we're more of a toolbox. I wouldn't say any client uses every feature. Some of them will kind of contradict each other, depending on what your goals are. That's kind of how we'll configure the system. Some people want a sole virtual tour where it's focused on content. Some people want more of a wayfinding when we do an overhead view so you can see in between all the buildings and all the sidewalks and what have you. But it's really, this is where we have the CSS. So there's different style sheets. And then there's contact forms for all that, but then you can add a publish section, and this is where you would add an embed code to add it to your website. So back on, like say, Tennessee Tech, this is, their website, this is their header, this is their footer. We're just an iframe, like a YouTube video or Google Map would be, that is, sandwiched in between this page here. I had talked with the folks and had gotten the property boundaries for what you guys would be interested in having mapped. So this is what we had our artists view. So they were able to give us pricing for the different styles that we could offer, as well as the software. So we had sent over the proposal as well. So you guys should have the numbers for the software as well as the illustrations. So I don't know if you've had a chance to review that as a whole, or if this is new to some people initially right now, but I'll do a quick overview. This is the only required fee is a software license that gives you access to the system. We provide that. The implementation is included with that. So you would just provide your content and we would upload it with you. With the implementation, we include a 360 camera for you to keep. So you have a tool to be able to gather content with. Like I said, at the end of the day, we're a content management system for creating a map, so we're only going to be as good as the content. We can have the coolest design buttons and whatnot, but if you don't have the descriptions or the facilities to kind of go back with it, they kind of hand in hand, I guess. But we do all the hosting, tech support, training. Like I said, I've been doing the software platform for 15 years. It was a Flash-based system way back when that was the cool way to do stuff on the internet. This day's obviously not. We've rewritten it 4 different times. It's kind of like building a house. First, you just want a roof, then you want a garage, then you want a pool, then you want a separate garage and a boat, etc. We've kind of had the luxury to be able to add that to this system, as it's progressed. I was one of the founders and one of the principals at the new company now, and the software development is really what we take our pride in. Our goal is not for you to have to scrap this project every 5 years and either trash it or have to redo it. It's to give you modern technology, and for y'all's responsibility is focus on content. If a building moves or a business changes names, you come in here and edit it, the description area, or edit the photos and what have you. So that's the software side. The map illustration, you can provide your own, or we have different artists, or you can take an aerial photo. You can spend as much or as little on design work as you want. I will say this is the eye candy of what attracts people. So this is your marketing, advertising dollars. This is what you would do with this. You can even do a print layouts with that as well. So there's other options for that. But there's different styles, and some of them, they kind of speak for themselves, is what they are. Whether it's, the 2D style or a 3D style, or the high detail style here, but that's all artwork, and you can spend as much or as little as you want to on artwork. I won't get into a debate about that today, but we do have options, and these artists have been working with us for many years and have pretty large portfolios for the different maps that they've drawn, I guess. Most of our clients have been education based, I guess, over the years, but like I said, anybody that it has a facility they're trying to attract people and get them off their screen or their phones or whatnot and travel there in person, we've kind of been seen as a tool to be able to kind of fill that gap, I guess, a bit. So I'll shut up for a second. Anybody have any questions, or?
Does anybody have questions?
Actually, I do. So where you were talking about uploading photos, can that be done at an individual building level, so that if we wanted to turn this into kind of a revenue source to offset some of this, you could sell space to a business to say, hey, in my business, I want these photos to pop up, and they would supply them and do that?
You could. It would be an administrative process of updating that. So I would imagine you wouldn't want every business to have access. So it would be somebody on y'all's staff would filter that content. But you would essentially just need a title, a description, and then any photos. There's different themes for like the layouts. So most of the ones we looked at have the side panel. This one I know has the center window, it's just a different layout. They all have different photo sizes, so whichever one you would choose during your implementation process, we would, crop all the photos for that, and then going forward, let you know what those, height and width of for the pixel size of that image is. But you can have as many markers as you want to on the map. It doesn't have to be per building. Some of these.
And those can be added by our admin later, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we like to do the initial dump of content, and then it's going to really rely on y'all to manage it, to keep it current. So you would have a library where you can add new photos if you need to, add new videos. If we have like a new YouTube video, you would just add that to the library, and once it's in the library, you can come into the workbench, edit whatever stop that it was in, assign that, and then publish your map. here, and then it would be live, on your map that you have embedded on your site. So you would have the full controls to be able to edit that and modify it. And if you wanted to, design the layout and choose a different color palette or something like that, we have CSS controls here, or just put in a ticket and we handle that as part of our service agreement.
And this is stored on AWS, so is there any limitation on our storage capabilities, of how much we can put out there?
No, I've had clients do, it was a pretty big amount of the 360 images. Sometimes those can get, big files, because there can be 3 to 5 megabytes a piece, if not bigger sometimes. And if you're doing one of those on 100 different buildings, there's not a limit on the size of, it's all hosted with Amazon. But all your images is set up here, all of your icons are here, and we don't have a limit. I haven't had anybody, any of the state universities, or anybody really make that a problem with the bill we've gotten, I guess. So it gets cheaper the more stuff you have on there, honestly.
And those are all my questions.
If I may interject, I do envision, so as we look to explore this option, I guess it might be helpful for you to know some ways that we're thinking about how it could be used. So not only embedded on our own website and able to be used on somebody's mobile device while they're downtown or planning a trip here, but also if we end up purchasing a touchscreen kiosk downtown as part of the Main Street project, it could be embedded on there. So people, while they're downtown, can be clicking on it interactively. It's
It's a website.
website that is embedded then, however we choose to embed it. Yep, and it would be helpful to we could create like the historic tour. So perhaps each building that has in their historic district, which we'll talk about in a little bit here, has a QR code to take the tour around West Bend. And so they could scan it on their phone and get to the tour part of that. It could be used for events and business listings and just so many different things. So I guess I just want to give you a little background of how we're envisioning it could be used.
So Jess,
this is the third layout. I failed to show you this one earlier, but you have the side panel, the center window. This is our full screen option here. So if you're wanting to have exterior images of everything and then interior images of what, and then people, those are kind of the three things I like to check for if I'm, trying to advertise a place, I guess. And then the business could provide, their description or a link to their own website or whatnot. Or you can even share individual stops for the map URL. So if I copy and paste that, this map will load, but automatically load to this point of interest. I can still go back to the map here, but it adds URLs to this side. So that's how each business could be able to potentially utilize this as well. So or for multiple use cases, because on our publish, there's a custom embed option here where I can choose, say, businesses, and I want it to show up on the street map layer. I don't know if I showed you all that, but we have your illustrated view, and then there's also a satellite view, and then we have a street view option, so you can choose your different base layer and put it on your use case. Some are more interesting than others. This is more your marketing tool. This is more of your wayfinding tool. You can also show your location. This is embedded on site, but you'll have the blue dot to show your location too. So if you were walking around the place, you don't necessarily need directions. You could just get a point in the right direction. So if you do need directions, there's a button here that'll give you from your current location, assuming that's enabled, to the latitude and longitude coordinates that we've assigned to the points of interest. So here's me in South Carolina, heading up, not too far from you guys from my direction, but in the back end, sorry if I'm going on a rant, but I forgot to show this. In the stop editor, one of the settings is where you would actually assign the coordinates. So it's not an address. So in this here, if this needed to be on this corner of the parking lot, if this was highlighting the handicap spots or something like that, or the bus stop, you can move that, and that's essentially going to change the routing and the positioning on the other views.
So is this web-based, or are there apps that are available for it so that they can just have it on their phone?
It's web-based. You could bookmark it as an app, though.
But it's not an app. It's not an app that we.
App, you can have little icons for that, and say one of those could be your map, and it would just link off to. Instead of embedding it, you would just link off to the map URL here. For accessibilities, we work with a lot of public places that are required for ADA laws and whatnot. We do have a a static output they will produce. A lot of schools will just, throw it on the bottom of their website. So for the Citadel, they'll have the map, and then below that, they'll have the ADA map. And what that is just a link. I can't click on these icons here, but below has a list of all of the points of interest. And this is in a format that will read out to that person if they're on those devices. So, so that way the information is accessible to them. Some people will have accessibility as categories on their map. So this New York College here, they'll have like accessible pathways, and they're highlighting the parking lots, and they're going to the routes to get to the elevators, and then have the markers for that. You can do academics and all entrances and all that stuff too, but just while I was talking accessibility.
And the cost is 30, the high end is 32, the low end is 29, or 30 actually, is that right?
Yep.
And 500 a month to maintain it?
He's curious about the cost, if we could go back to that slide.
We can't read it, so
Yep.
that's why I'm looking back at last month's
Yep.
notes.
I can pull that up too.
Which one was it?
Like the cost, so
design cost.
what I have in our notes from our past
sure.
meeting was it was $29,900 for the one version and $32,500 and then $500 a month maintenance?
Yeah, so there's different artists that do this. The first step of having a 3D map illustration drawn is having a pilot fly circles around the property to get us photos. Once we have current reference of that, they'll supplement sometimes with Google or whatnot, to be able to get an idea of things. But, the photos are really what they have to have something that's accurate, that's current, just because stuff does change. And you'll need to choose a perspective. But depending on what style you would go with, for all the 3D styles, that would be sorry if I'm...
You're spending 30 or 32.
Yeah, so this was kind of one of the processes that I documented. This artist, they modeled the properties, so they basically just did the polygon shapes and kind of extruded the heights and put in the road perimeters. And then we send the client, different views from different angles. You can rotate it, tilt it, however you want to change the lens of it if you need to. North doesn't have to be top. If there's a certain fountain or there's a certain building or some sort of statue that we don't want to have in the shadows, obviously we're going to try to highlight this. But this is your design decision, and it's really up to you to be able to choose what you want. If north is top is less confusing because you're a larger area, then that is what it is. But that's some of the modeling views that the artist would draw, and then they would basically take whatever chosen perspective and then export that out of their modeling system, and then add all the rendering details here. So they'll have, different ways to be able to have, icons if you have insets or a logo or street names and stuff like that to be able to add to it to get, whatever you need for your final artwork. Once we have that file, though, it's just a JPEG that we export and out of Photoshop typically, and then import it into our software. We add the icons to it. If you ever need to have updates on that drawing, that's pretty common, I guess, so to say. Like, I forgot to mention it, on this building here on the top left, they had that under construction. So, and once we have the plans and current references, usually you may have to send a drone up or whatnot if it's a 3D style to get that, taken care of. But if we have references for it, we can usually get it, drawn in.
Anybody have any other questions?
So that very point that you just brought up, who takes care of those changes as far as updating the pictures?
Did you hear the question?
No, sorry. I guess some people are sitting further away from the mic.
Yep,
maybe.
you're fine. One of our members asked who takes care of the updates? Like, let's say a building does change, what is the process for that?
So it's going to be, if it's just a content change, if you're just adding the description, that it's going to be on y'all to log in, to the platform to be able to, go to the workbench and find whatever marker it is to be able to edit it. If you're adding photos, you would all do that from this system. If you need to change the artwork file, You would have the artwork to do so. Usually most clients have the artist that drew it updated as well, so it's all on one master file and what have you. But once we have that artwork, this is where it's uploaded to the system. If you need updates drawn, that's where it would be a one-time additional cost to have that artwork done. For any design fees, those are based on the scope of whatever the updates are. For 3D styles, it's usually, I would say, $300 to $1,500 is probably what the range is for most updates. Depending on what the scope is, sometimes it's a whole block you have to draw. Sometimes it's a Catholic church style versus just a metal gym type building. So there's different design elements that go into the time of it. But it's all like a 2D style work here. These are faster and easier to draw and easier to update too. Just like the aerial images here. This are just send up an airplane to go get you a new shot whenever you want to do one. Then you would, go back to the back end, have too many tabs open, and then replace your file here. So you have flexibility to really do 100 different ways. You can spend your marketing budget, you can spend it all on content and have a video producer, do some really flashy stuff and do a 2D map, or even just do a street map and don't even have an illustration. Or I like to say that the 3D map illustrations do have, a purpose outside of just the map, the interactive software, because there's print purposes and signage. These are big things. You mentioned kiosks. We do have a school that did that, and we formatted the CSS so it fit on their screen. I'll look up, Jess, and send you a picture of what that looked like. But it's the same software. It's just they had the website locked, so you couldn't go, to Google or YouTube or whatever, random websites. It was just stuck on the map page, and then they had the legend and all that information to be able to act business as usual.
Great. Thanks, Todd.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's it for now.
Mark.
Okay.
Oh, Mark.
Yeah, you talked about one of the things that comes with this is a 3D camera for 360, or a 360 degree camera for mapping. Do you have an example of what kind of output you get from
Sure.
the 3D camera?
I'll share my screen. So the camera we send is. I've sent it out 28 times last year. This Ricoh Theta, it's a 4K camera about the size of your cell phone. There's a fisheye lens on each side of it. There's an app that you actually download on your phone if you don't want your face to be in every single shot, but there's also a way to mount it for a tripod. There are fancier cameras you can use. This is one we just kind of include to get you going. It does shoot videos as well as photos. So if I go to, I think this guy here,
Yeah, we're not seeing your screen, unfortunately, but if you want to send me the
am I
pictures,
not-
that'd be fine. Yeah.
let's see, how do I share my, thought I was doing it. Share screen. All right, are you all able to see this now?
Yep.
Okay. So I need to go back to the camera. So here's the camera that we send you. It's just an Amazon package that gets delivered over. Here is an example of a client that made a video. They had it standing on a tripod. She stood in front of it and talked while, I got it muted, but that's one way I've seen people do this. This one was kind of a creative way they did, where they just kind of walked around. I guess this is a different one. They just set this up in the quad, and as people walked around, you'll see people walking through classes. So it's like, what it's like to be on foot here, so to say. They have some of these where, so they just have their professors, or you could have the business owners just kind of walk around through campus or through the facilities and just kind of talk about what goes on here, what we do here, blah, blah, blah. So, there's not a right or wrong way to do it. It's just, how do you want to tell your story, essentially?
Perfect. I have a question.
Yep.
Do we have any information on what kind of revenue this has produced, or success stories with areas that have used this? Or is this strictly like we're just trying to give people a better way to visit West Bend.
I think it's a way to better visit. Looking at their model, it's been all universities who don't need money.
Right, yeah.
So,
I mean, I just was hoping to hear a
guessing it's
success
not
story from a
revenue
small
generator.
town like us that, used this and saw exponential growth from, okay, all right.
So most of our marketing efforts have been on colleges, but we have done case studies and stuff like that. So here's one that talks about, enhance the engagement with their virtual tours and goes through, what they did and some of the percentages they've gotten and stuff like that. So for most schools, they'll have kind of their marketing funnel where if they can, or I know y'all aren't a school, but you're trying to attract people to your area, the more people you can get to visit your website, the more you can go to that will want to go to your place in person. The more people that go in person, they're going to spend money when they get there. So this is just, at the end of the day, I would think of it as a tool to get them to go there. And then once they go there, they're going to have more accommodations to know where stuff is. So if they know there's a bakery around the corner, you're going to have a way to do that. Google Maps is going to do all that stuff all day, but this is going to be a tool for you to curate that and, call out special things or have a custom map illustration to be able to, make yourself look unique, essentially.
Okay,
The vanity is kind of a lot of it, with the art design, just to kind of, design your own stuff. So if you're doing any new branding or stuff like that, we see that a lot with our clients doing those type of things.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Todd. We really appreciate your time today presenting. And if nobody else has questions, we can be in touch with you after this meeting.
Okay, awesome. Well, y'all have a good day. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya.
Questions, comments?
Go ahead, Peggy.
I was just gonna say, I feel like what he does is a very niche product, so maybe there's not a lot of companies that do this kind of thing. I guess I just feel that it was a little grandiose for perhaps the size of our bid district compared to a college campus or the capital of Washington. I like the idea, but I would rather put funds towards something a little bit more productive than that at this time.
Anybody else?
I have a question. Does the city have any interest in doing anything like this for for all of West Bend, or is this just specifically for downtown?
We're just exploring it for the downtown right now.
So my question at the last meeting, and I know, Jay, you weren't here, or were you? No, you weren't here. What is the possibility of getting some of the money from the room tax to offset this? I mean, we're doing tourism. The whole talk is to bring people into downtown. I realize that tourism tax is supposedly, heads and beds, but, there's businesses that are bringing people into town, that are staying in town, that are, I myself last week had 5 people in town. And, they ate downtown, they did stuff downtown. So I think there can be an argument made to that. In the past, all I've heard is, no, this is only for events and that's the only thing they're going to give money for. But I think there's always a way to look at other things differently.
I can speak as a Tourism Commission member, certainly on behalf of the Tourism Commission. Mark Allen is also on the Tourism Commission. He can jump in as well. I think it would be a reach to gain tourism dollars to fund this. You mentioned it, Mike. You'd have to really prove that nexus that these fancy maps, so to speak, produce heads and beds. And I guess personally, I didn't see it today. But I understand why you'd make that ask, but I think it would be a pretty tough sell. This back.
Putting my Tourism Commission hat on, I would say I'd have to agree with Jay. It's kind of a stretch now, but if you were to tie this in as a marketing tool for people that have the events that do qualify currently, this would be a place they could use their tourism advertising dollars to have the route of the parade or the event mapped or something along those lines. So there might be a stretch. It's It's not a quick, easy, if A, then B.
Yep, this topic really stemmed from the initial marketing committee meeting back in November when we were brainstorming ways to let people know about changes to the construction and where to park and what's happening, something that we could change on the fly, which is compared to like Google, we don't have that ability to do so. It's just a flat sort of map that is a lot of times outdated. So it's just an option. There's no obligation, of course.
Well, I will say I agree with Peggy that I think it's a lot of money that could be used in better ways.
Great.
But
You never know until you ask, right?
Oh,
So, I mean,
I'm
and-
not asking, just presenting
yeah,
options.
no, I mean, like we went out and we looked at something, and even $500 a month to maintain when we have to do all the work on it. That, yeah,
It could be a lot.
yeah.
Great.
so we don't need a vote, we just need a kind of a consensus. Everybody okay with dropping this topic and trying to look at the marketing committee next week? Who's got a meeting to see if they have some other ideas?
Sounds good.
Okay. Then the next one is another virtual with the historic tax credit program presentation. And I'm guessing his name is Paul Porter looking at the screen.
Yep. Hey, Paul, are you still online?
Yes, I am.
Oh, great. Well, we're ready for your presentation if you're still able to do so.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Let's see. Just get some stuff out of the way here on my screen and pull my slideshow back up. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, let's see. Everybody see the opening slide of tax credits for historic buildings?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, well, excuse me. Well, I'm Paul Porter. I am the tax credit reviewer for the Eastern District of Wisconsin. At the moment, I'm the only tax credit reviewer because my counterpart left for another position in Indiana. So we're hopefully going to get a new Western District person by April. So at the moment, I'm handling all the federal tax credit projects for the state of Wisconsin. But you are in my regular Eastern District. So I always like to start with this slide here with the cartoon because it's kind of funny because, you know, taxes are always a confusing thing. And the guy says, none of this makes any sense. It's almost as if they don't want me to understand. And she says, well, maybe that's why they call it the tax code. So anyway, looking at the slide here, the tax credit is differing from a tax deduction, whereas a tax deduction lowers the amount of income tax subject to taxation, but a tax credit lowers the amount of tax owed. So $1 tax credit reduces the amount of income tax owed by $1. So that's helpful to know. Okay, there are two programs for income producing properties in Wisconsin. The federal tax credit program that provides 20% tax credits for eligible expenses, and the state tax credits that provide 20% tax credits for eligible expenses. Combining the two programs provides a 40% return of the cost on your eligible expenses. There's a third program that we offer for homeowners that provides 25% tax credits for the National Register listed homes in either a National Register listed historic district or individually listed status. Today, I'll just be focusing on the income producing properties in this presentation. Also, when you do enroll in the federal tax credits, you're automatically enrolled in the Wisconsin tax credits. So there's only one set of paperwork to do. In terms of looking up your building, it's important to do research first, determine if it's eligible for tax credits. So if you go to our website, which I have listed up at the top here, wisconsinhistory.org, the last tile on the right at the top of the page is your Preserve Your Homes and Properties tile. If you click on that, then you'll see a new page with a search bar at the top. Type in your address into that search bar, and it will come up with an index page that has your property on it. Click on your highlighted address, and then it will open the full page about your property. The information on this page is very helpful in filling out the Part 1 of your application. The Part 1 establishes the historic significance of your property. Note, the database includes all surveyed properties, and it does not guarantee that your property is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Surveyed properties in the database are old enough to be evaluated for eligibility, but their presence there doesn't guarantee that a property will qualify for the tax credits. So if after conducting your research you still aren't sure if your property is eligible, you can email us at taxcredits@wisconsinhistory.org for more assistance. So for those in attendance who own contributing property in the newly National Register listed West Bend Downtown Historic District, you're now eligible to pursue the income producing property tax credits, which is really exciting for you. If after you're doing your research and you discover that your property is not listed in the National Register, our Resources Evaluation Committee, the acronym is REC, will evaluate your property based on one or more of the following criteria. Criterion A is for patterns of community development, social history within that community, or some other aspects of community development. Criterion B is for significant persons associated with that specific property. Criterion C is for outstanding architectural merit, and criterion D for significant archaeological remains. 9 times out of 10, we don't usually have anything on a site for criterion D because most sites are disturbed soil properties. Usually only places that you're going to find archaeological remains are on sites that are Wisconsin historical sites like Villa Louis or Pendarvis or someplace like that. But more often than not, we're working with criterion A and C on most nominations. It takes approximately 1 year to go through the listing process for a single property. Historic districts often take much longer as there is a lot more research and writing to do for multiple buildings. You can do a nomination and a tax credit project concurrently, so you don't have to do the nomination first and then once it's listed, go after the tax credits. So you can do both at the same time. However, you can't claim the tax credits until your building is actually listed in the National Register of Historic Places. So, the property must be a certified historic structure listed either individually or as a contributing resource in a National Register Historic District. There is a minimum investment that I will discuss on the next slide to qualify for the program. And all work must meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. Okay, so here's how you figure out what you need to spend. You take the purchase price of your property, subtract the land value at the time of purchase, subtract any depreciation you've taken on the property on your income taxes, then add any capital improvements you have done to the property. These include activities as like putting on a new roof, replacing the furnace, water heater, etc. The resulting figure is your adjusted basis. You must spend at least the adjusted basis or $5,000, whichever is greater. Sorry, my clock's chiming in the background. Well, 1 of 9 anyway. Now, if you don't qualify for the federal tax credits after doing that adjusted basis, there's still the state tax credits, which you can pursue instead. If you're only pursuing the state tax credits, your project needs to be at least $50,000 or more. But if you are enrolling in the federal tax credit program, then you're automatically enrolled in the state tax credit program, and so then the $50,000 doesn't apply here. The Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation need to be followed on the project to qualify, and I will talk about those in a little bit. There also is a $3.5 million cap per parcel for the total of tax credits taken. You would have to spend approximately $17,500,000 total to reach that $3.5 million cap through the 20% tax credits. So you have a wide range of work that you can do before you're going to hit your cap. Okay, so here's the standards. I'll just briefly go through these and translate these into more practical terms. The first one is property shall be used for its historic purposes or be placed in a new use that requires minimal change to the defining characteristics of the building and its site and environment. So I think that one's pretty self-explanatory for reuse. Try to find a compatible new use for the building. The second one is the historic character of a property shall be retained and preserved. The removal of historic materials or features that characterize that space shall be avoided. Sorry, that out of the way. And of course, try to save as much original material as possible. Each property shall be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use. Changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as adding conjectural features or architectural elements from other buildings, shall not be undertaken. So basically what this means is if you have a building of a particular style, you don't go and change the complete architectural style of the building to something else and try to create a different period. Like for instance, if it's an Italianate historic storefront, you don't want to turn it into a Craftsman because that creates a false sense of history. Most properties do change over time, and those changes that have acquired historic significance in their own right shall be retained and preserved. And that applies to mostly when you're looking at a property and it's over 50 years old and the building has been added on to a few times, and you're looking to see how old are those additions or changes, and are they significant? More often than not, when you're looking at like historic commercial storefronts, sometimes you'll see remodelings from like the 1940s and the 1950s where they've added like neon signs and vitrolite glass to the front and have really changed it into the streamlined modern. Those are old enough now that they've acquired significance, so those should be taken into consideration when you're going to do a rehab on a historic downtown building. Number 5 is distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that characterize a property shall be preserved. I think that one is also pretty self-explanatory. Number 6, deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced. Where the severity of the deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature shall match the old in design, color, texture, and other visual qualities, and where possible, materials. Replacement of missing features shall be substantiated by documentary, physical, or pictorial evidence. The thing that I find that I run into the most with this particular standards has to do with windows. The standards require that if you have your original windows still in place, that you should first try to repair them. And in some cases, if they are too far gone, rotted, then the new windows need to match the design characteristics of the original so that when you're looking at the building, that the new windows match the old ones. But you must document how far gone they are before a replacement is authorized. Number 7 is chemical or physical treatments such as sandblasting that can cause damage to historic materials should not be used. The surface cleaning of structures, if appropriate, shall be undertaken using the gentlest means possible. And I think this one is also fairly self-explanatory. Sandblasting is probably one of the worst things you can do to a masonry building because it takes off the glazed finish on masonry, allowing a lot of water to get into the building and obliterate the masonry, causing you a hugely expensive repair. I'm dealing with a particular building project in Madison right now that had three huge 3-story walls on 3 sides of the building sandblasted, and then they painted it, and now the paint is falling off. So they're faced with a very expensive problem to fix. So no sandblasting, because it just isn't a good idea, and it'll cost you a lot more money in the end. Number 8 is significant archaeological resources affected by a project shall be protected and preserved. As such resources must be disturbed, mitigation measures shall be undertaken. Again, this is one that you probably will never run into. And again, mostly you'll see that like happening out in battlefields or state historic sites. Number 9, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work should be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. This means that if you're adding on to a building, you should make the addition relatable to the original building, but also differentiated enough so that you can tell when you're looking at it that that's not part of the original building. And then number 10 relates to that, in that new additions and adjacent or related or new construction shall be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment would be unimpaired. So if somebody comes along in the future and wants to go back to the original footprint, they can take the addition off and with minimal repairs can put that building back the way it was. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. Okay. It wasn't letting me advance to the next slide. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Of course, there's a lot more information on the National Park Service's website on treating historic properties, and you can get a lot more in-depth information from this website. But all projects do need to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation that I just went over. You can, if you're interested in looking at things more in depth, if you go to the nps.gov website, which is at the top of the screen here, there's a lot more technical information that you can get. There is a section on that website that lists out preservation briefs, and it actually, that picks apart a building by components, like for instance, the masonry that I was mentioning before, about not sandblasting it. There's preservation briefs on how to clean masonry without damaging it. And then there's also briefs on how to repair damaged masonry without doing permanent damage to the building. But there's all kinds of different subjects in there that you can look at and learn about. More often than not, you'll be working with a preservation architect who has a working knowledge of all this stuff, who can help you work through all these things. And also, if doing the paperwork and research for your project and planning does seem overwhelming to you, we do have a list of form preparing consultants who can help you through the process of your tax credit applications. Their fees are eligible expenses, and a lot of owners and developers use their services to navigate all the ins and outs of working with the National Park Service on their projects. We also do keep a list of qualified preservation architects who have worked on a lot of historic projects who can also help you with designing and implementing a rehab to a historic building. And their fees are also eligible expenses in the program. So, and speaking of eligible expenses, so what can be counted as eligible expenses? Working on any component of the historic building on both the interior and the exterior envelopes. The architect and engineering fees and consultant fees are eligible expenses, as I mentioned before. Ineligible expenses include new construction, which are additions or outbuildings, landscaping, parking lots, movable equipment such as refrigerators, stoves, and furniture, and equipment specific to a new use, usually tenant spaces for restaurant equipment that can be removed. The photos above are Barton Elementary School in West Bend that underwent a $9.65 million rehabilitation project between 2018 to 2020 to create affordable rental housing. Okay, so the application process. At the front end of a proposed project, it is best to bring in your SHPO tax credit reviewer. That would be either me or the other reviewer before you started anything on the building to discuss what you want to do with it. Your SHPO rep can steer you in the direction of making the project meet the standards while assisting you with planning for the new adaptive reuse of the building. We can also help you navigate through issues with the building that could be problematic with meeting the standards in the proposed new use. The National Park Service insists on reviewing projects before any work starts. Otherwise, they will deny the entire project. And I have seen this happen before, and it's a very expensive mistake. One person lost out on a $20 million project because they refused to wait for written approval from the Park Service before jumping into it. And I have been in this for 28 years, so it's just, it's a good protection for you to just wait until you get the written approval from the Park Service. So also, again, early involvement with us as your project partner is key to having a successful project and obtaining your tax credits. Also, working with a consultant architect on these can help take a lot of stress and pressure off of you in terms of developing the project from inception to completion. And once your project is submitted to our office for review, SHPO can take up to 30 days to review it, although we usually try to get them reviewed within 3 weeks if our workload will allow it. We may ask questions or ask for additional information to make it clear to our NPS reviewer what you're trying to accomplish. Once we forward the project, you will work separately with WEDC to do the financial contracts for your tax credits. After NPS has finished their review and provided a conditional approval, then you can start on your project. Throughout the course of the work, there may need to be amendments from time to time on discoveries at the job site that need to alter something from the approved Part 2. Projects often have 2 to 10 amendments depending on the size and scope. And you may recognize this building. This is the recently rehabilitated West Bend Theater, which turned out absolutely beautifully. So I had to include some pictures of what the rehabilitation looks like on the inside if you haven't been in there to look at it yet. So the timeline for your project is based off of current staff and workloads. NPS was able to reduce their period from 45 to 60 days down to 30 to 45 days after hiring more review staff and getting them trained in their positions. So far, I've been able to maintain the 30 days review period, even though my counterpart is not with us anymore, but I'm doing my best to keep up with the 30 days, and hopefully we will have our new reviewer in by April of this year. But between January to April is usually peak project receipt time for new projects as everybody's gearing up for the spring construction season. So I'm hoping to keep that 30-day window going, but you never know what's going to come in the door from day to day. So as for fees, Wisconsin SHPO does not charge fees for either the income-producing projects or the homeowner projects. As you can see from the slide, NPS does charge review fees based on the size of their project. Small projects up to $79,000 have no fees. Medium-sized projects have $845 plus 0.15% of the project costs, while the largest projects over 3.850 million have a flat fee of $6,500 for their review. Oops, wrong way. Okay, this is a question that we get a lot. Can I sell or transfer my credits? Although you cannot sell the federal credits, you can syndicate them, which means you can bring in other partners who have cash to invest into the project to help pay for the project. You do need all the partners that come into the project. Everybody needs to maintain that partnership for a period of 5 years after the project is over with, and then you can divest after that, because the 5 years is during the tax credit recapture period. But at the state level, you can sell the state tax credits to infuse cash into your project. I recommend that you work with your tax professional for firms that can help you with that particular transaction. And that's the end.
Thank you, Paul. Does anybody have any questions for Paul?
No, I think we ought to just give Paul's info, and anybody that does can
Sounds
contact
good.
him direct.
Thank you very much, Paul, for your time today presenting. If we have any questions, we'll send them directly to you, if that's all right.
It sounds good. All right. Well, thank you for your time and attention, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the presentation.
We did. Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
So just a question, and then we got to move on, but we're not in the national registry yet, are we?
So I don't have confirmation that we have been added to the National Register yet. That's the second part that
Right.
takes place after it was approved by the state. So it's possible that it has, but I haven't received anything yet. So
Okay.
can look
I
into
just
that.
wanted to clarify, because if you can't start your project beforehand, we're not even technically in it that we know of, so it just delays everything.
Yep.
Okay, next item is the bid transportation update. I think the biggest thing that came out of that is the timeline of when things are gonna start. And I don't have it in front of me, so I don't wanna say the wrong things,
I can pull it up here.
but I believe it's April.
Sorry, wrong page. There we go. That's kind of small. So the advertisement for bids is happening this week, and they'll open the bids later in February, so it's a couple of weeks. And the contract will be awarded March 6th, and the anticipated construction period will begin in mid-April, and it will extend through October 27th.
And just clarification, construction starts in the south and moves to the north?
No, it's gonna be the full thing. They're gonna close the street from north to south because they're gonna work in different phases. So the entire street will be closed.
They work horizontally, not vertically.
That was a big revelation in the meeting as well that we found out.
Engineers look at it as a system that starts at the bottom and works to the top. And when people talk about a phased project, they're thinking they're going to start in the 100s and move to the 200s and so on. That's a vertical progression. Doesn't meet the engineering requirements. You got to do the bottom stuff first.
Once a contractor is selected in March, they are planning to have a meeting, public meeting with everyone in the downtown or anyone who is interested in attending, and they'll be able to provide a lot better sense of when and what will be shut down and what their process will look like. I would recommend that attending that meeting. We'll know more about that soon.
Thank you.
That's all we have on that. Next thing is the facade grant update.
Yeah, are you pulling it up?
I can pull up the projects for you, Mark.
We met last week. We reviewed 5 projects. 4 of them were qualifying. One was a residential property that we're going to suggest that they apply for potentially the program through the historic center, the tower that we just heard mentioned here, that there's a residential equivalent to the tax credit program. The 4 projects we looked at are great. We actually have an interesting one that is 2 adjacent properties. Elizabeth Rose and Ghoulies Pizza, while each is an independent project, they are proceeding sort of as a pair. We did have some questions that have gone back to get answers through planning, building inspection, and so on. We are planning to meet, I want to say it's 2 weeks now, and we'll do the awards at that point. But all 4 projects outstanding. no question that all 4 of these have merits, so.
Absolutely.
So we look forward to bringing to the bid meeting next month what those awards were and more details on them. Any questions? Cool. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is just, if you have items for the agenda next, get them to myself or Jess, so we can get them out there. And if there's nothing else,
Can I just ask, when is that marketing meeting?
parking meeting?
Marketing meeting?
Marketing is next week, Tuesday at 7:30
Here.
here.
So we'll have an update for the
Yep.
next bid board meeting in March, is that before March 6th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the bid board meeting is.
The
I'm not
next,
sure what day that falls on.
the next bid board meeting is actually on the 7th.
7th, okay. So we'll know
We'll have an update from that
if
committee.
the contract has been awarded also on March 6th.
Yes.
And that goes to council.
It'll
What
be at
day is
council
that?
the night before.
That'll go to
Yep.
council on the 6th, and I'll be able to let you know what happened. For those of you who don't tune into must-see TV, to watch the council live, I'll let you know.
Could I also add, this is, I think, my third request, employee parking downtown as an agenda item?
Sure.
Seems like we've solved the customer parking, but now we need to address the other.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask, is referring to addressing as to where they are supposed to park?
Well,
Is that-
have some kind of conversation plan, something like that. It seemed to be a hot issue at the council meeting with a lot of people who commented.
Okay. Now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
All right.
Thanks, everybody.